humans will lose out on opportunity. But then there are going to be people that need to do some really impact. They need to have the right feeling in this video game or this movie clip or whatever. And you will need a real artistic creation that a human made. The computer won't give it to you. Well, what about the AI radio that just generates music that's like new music? They're just generating music. It's just generating music because it has all the parameters, it has all the styles and all that stuff. I think it's great. Why is it great? Because it's not going to be as good as the actual human making it. Maybe technically and mathematically, it's going to give us that contrast again to when something's really good.
Stay tuned, stay curious. Enculturation Podcast. Coflo, welcome back to the show.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have you back. You're my first returning guest. So it's
I am?
Yeah, your first returning guest. It's a milestone for me. When I started back in that year, it's always a mystery how far it is going to go, but so far it seems to be paying off. So thank you for being open to come on the show again.
Tight. Hell yeah. I'm happy to be back. I'm glad to be the first of something.
Yeah, for sure. The funny thing is, when I last interviewed you, or when we had our episode together, at that time, my only experience of your production music was actually like one of your older albums, right?
Okay.
I think it was the Sofado one.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like way back.
That's really old.
Yeah. And then since then...
that's like 10 years old at least.
I mean, obviously, I've seen you play live, right? But I haven't gone to your Bandcamp. So recently when I went to your Bandcamp, I was like, oh, man, this guy's been putting in work. It's so much more music.
Yeah, and that's actually... Bandcamp's like not... it's obviously a good... it's a good snapshot of things, but it's like a fraction of my actual catalog.
Where's your full catalog at?
It's kind of scattered. Okay. I'd say that like if you're gonna go to one store, there's the bulk of my catalog that's actually publicly available is gonna be on TrackSource or Beatport. TrackSource more likely, just because of like a lot of the licensing that I've done and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. And then what's the best way to find you on TrackSource? Is it a certain username or?
Coflo, Coflo. Yeah, okay. I'm the only one.
Okay, word up. Yeah, so I was curious about like still the thoughts of originality, especially with the recent advances in AI. And I know you also have background as a programmer, software developer, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what are your thoughts concerning you have, you're a music producer and also you have programming experience. So like what are your thoughts around AI?
AI specific to the music space, it's pretty exciting to me. And the reason why is because I think a lot of people in the music world, they oftentimes will get quite grumpy. People that have more experience will get quite grumpy around technology making things too easy. So it's kind of like, the bar for being able to do XYZ, like DJ or make a beat or write a melody or something, it's like on the floor because AI could do it for you or a button could do it for you or whatever. And the way I look at it is kind of like there are things that can be easier. They don't necessarily make the concept easier, but the action of attainability, like start with something, the bar can be lowered so that you can find a place of, I would say, like a positive feedback loop for being creative. So I'm trying to not be too philosophical about it, but one of the things that I remember when I was young getting into music production was how incredibly difficult it was to start. And a huge part of it was no mentorship and no accessibility of information about how to start. There's stuff in books, but then it was like written abstractly and it's obviously in a book. And when you're trying to like do production, you're not growing up in a studio. And I'm, trying to do stuff on a computer. It's complicated. So the barrier to entry is like very high and this stuff is complicated. So any tool, in my opinion, that is going to make things easier to be able to be creative is a really dope tool. It doesn't make the actual thing of the art any easier. It just makes the barrier to entry easier. And sure, there are going to be things that maybe you wouldn't be able to do because the computer, the AI or whatever, the software can help you do it. But like, it doesn't necessarily stunt the opportunity of what it is to create the art. You're still going to find a way I think like the ingenuity of the human spirit is going to find a way to do more with what's available to them. So for example, two big things in AI that I've seen come up quite a bit, and one of them interests me a lot. The other one, not quite as much, at least not yet for what I'm doing, is like, one is like taking audio references, like the timbre of something, and being able to recreate it in a way where people are using it for like vocals. For example, there's like apparently like a vocal DAW that's very specific to this now. I forget the name of it, but it's like you could take a voice, and they've taken voices already that are like, you know, taken audio parts of it. The AI has trained it, and then you could write something, put the MIDI notes in, or literally sing it, and it'll record it. And then the AI will take that other voice, like somebody that kind of sounds like an Alicia Keys or somebody or whatever, and it'll sing it with that timbre, with that format, like that vocal expression, but it's like doing the thing that you wrote or maybe you sang. So it's not you sounding like you trying to sing. It's like this other thing. So it's like, it's really cool. And I think it's extremely powerful. And if for nothing else, a lot of people are like, well, fuck that. Then, you know, like Drake's going to be on every track, or blah, blah, blah is going to be on every track. It's like, think about some really brilliant, person who writes the most beautiful stuff and has these great ideas for top line melody, but doesn't have like the training in their voice to be able to do the thing. Like they have maybe a non-traditional approach to the way they write a song. Well, if you have a system that can help you create that demo to where you can manifest this thing, so it's not just words and not just theoretically something you're humming, but like you have something that you could put into a project and deliver it to, could be a pop artist, could be some independent art. It doesn't matter. Like you could present something that really amazing because you have the technology to do it, to help you write that thing. And then you could end up recording a really dope song with like a really brilliant singer, working with the producers to like create this whole thing. And like, it could all start with taking your words on a paper, because that's what you're good at, and then manifesting it into something rather quickly, rather than you trying to like sell your vision, especially if you're a nobody, sell your vision to like this brilliant singer and be like, yo, I have this great idea for a song. Check out these words. This melody goes like this. And you're over here like, you know, struggling to get this idea across, you know. But like if you have a tool that you can learn a little bit, you know, and it's not incredibly complicated, there's still a barrier to entry to that, but like you might be able to manipulate, to be able to create something really beautiful. In the music world, this is how people used to cut demos. You know, it's like the songwriter cuts the demo, you deliver it to the artist is like, wow, this is great. And then they kind of, you know, they shape it into their thing. And then the other side of that, which I'm actually already starting to use and experiment with a bit, is very similar. And it's about like replicating timbre, where you can take a sound, put it into a synthesis engine. It does like an analyzation, and it creates this whole thing where it tries iterations of like creating this sound. And it's like, you take a recorded piece of audio, you know, what people would consider like a sample of audio, and you actually have a synthesizer recreate that. So it becomes something you now not only can play, not just trigger a sound, but you can actually play it. You could actually manipulate the synthesis in like a subtractive form, or manipulate the amplitude envelope or the filter, or like you actually have control over the sound manipulation to where you can now expand upon it and control it like you would as if you were building a patch in a synthesizer. And it's like the AI can just fucking create that for you, and then you have this control. To me, that's fucking super sick. And actually the plugin that I've been fucking with, it's called Synplant, and the UI for how it does it. I mean, we could look at it here on the podcast, but like, it's like, it's like DNA, and it grows these versions of the thing in real time.
Oh, really?
It's so wild to look at, but like what it does. And when you watch it, you're like, I get it. You know, like,
you want to pull something up?
Yeah. You want to look at it now?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Fuck it. So here's a sample pack that I have. It's just on my Bandcamp. I have 2 sample packs out right now, and I'm working on more this year, but this one is a bunch of FM frequency modulation stuff that I made on my Digatone, which is a FM synthesizer. So I've got this chord or this one. That's what that sample sounds like. I drag it in here. Okay. Right. I hit this button, and then these 4 lanes, it's like you're planting trees. Okay. So watch.
Yo, this is super cool.
So cool, right? So obviously you can, and all these little dots are iterations of like the genome of its expression of trying to create the sound. Oops, I'm sorry. Let me apologize. Let me kill that. Okay, so like when I click on this, you can hear it's all the same timbre, right? It has the same timbre, but it's slightly different. So this one, the first iteration was like, it took a chance, but it's like, I could choose any one of these. And this, so let's say I choose this one, listen to it against the original sample. Sounds really fucking close, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so I choose that. And so now I have the ability to play it. And here's the thing is, you're kind of like, a lot of sample people would be like, oh, you're just, they call it transpositions. Like you're just choosing to play it slower or faster, but that's actually not the case. It's actually a real synthesized sound that has an envelope, an amplitude envelope, where I can make it last longer because it's a short sound. But if I increase the release, now it has more, it sustains longer. Right. And then I can actually manipulate it further. And this is where it like starts to get crazy. Like, it's such a cool UI. But like this section of the DNA is the envelope. So this is like if I wanted to like start with like a lot of attack or have a little delay in it. You can add more sustain.
So what you're showing me so far is the accessibility of different ideas all somewhat instantaneously, right?
Yeah, it's like I can now take something that was a sound and I can create something. I have something that now I can actually manipulate and control, which is like, there's so many ways to manipulate and mangle audio and different stuff. But like the way that it does this is just really interesting in the characterization of like, for people who are into synthesis, this is extremely powerful. And the fact that like it does some other really crazy shit where each one of these is essentially like a wild iteration.
This UI is so cool.
It's so cool. And like what gets crazier about this is like, this is a D sharp now. So if I play a D, sounds like that. But if I play the sharp, which would be, it should be actually D flat, but now that sounds like that, right? And you could essentially do that for all these in varying different degrees. So and then there's like macro controls and stuff where I could like because you essentially have slightly different, it's almost like mycelium, like different like pathways of like the audio. So anyways, this is AI. AI can do this, you know? To me, this kind of shit is exciting.
So at this level, it's down to the particular frequencies or a certain sound level, right? What about like the overall composition or production level? Is there any AI tools that you currently know of or are using in that regard?
Yes. There is. I'm not really using anything from like composition or arrangement. I've used some. It's not AI. I don't think it's AI in the like super advanced sense, but like for instance, there are tools that I've used in the past, and they've really been. While they've been helpful, they've also been educational to where I don't really need to use them quite as much. But there are tools that a company called Isotope makes where if you were to put like two sounds together, like I have a vocal, like a singer singing, and then I have maybe like a synthesizer, and they're playing together in my song, maybe my vocal is the most important thing, right? But the synthesizer it's called frequency masking, where the harmonics that you're hearing are masking something else, so you're not hearing the totality of what's important. So it's like sitting in a loud room and everybody at the table is talking, and you're trying to listen to this one person, and you're like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Can you speak up?" Something needs to change for you to be able to get the intelligibility of what you're trying to get from that conversation, right? And we often experience this in everyday life, this harmonic or like this frequency masking when it comes to the human voice, because our ears are attuned to like really hear a certain frequency spectrum very well because of the sound of the human voice. Like we've, I guess, biologically adapted to that, right? So like we're constantly dealing with frequency masking based on our biology. So when we work inside of music, especially in like computer music, where there can be crazy harmonics and weird sounds and different stuff, it's quite a beneficial tool to have something be able to analyze two sets of information, and you determine one of them is more important than the other. In my hypothetical example, I have somebody singing and I have a synthesizer, and they're together, and when the synthesizer is playing, I don't hear the vocal as good. I hear it, but I don't hear maybe certain vowels or consonants, or I just the richness of the voice doesn't come through. It doesn't hit my ears correctly, right? Because the synthesizer and the voice are fighting for priority to be heard. So there are tools that they use some kind of machine learning. But I don't think it's quite as advanced as something that's like learning from itself and like really, I mean, I'm not a AI software guy, right? Like I don't really know the ins and outs of that stuff, but it's using a machine type of learning system to be able to listen to a set of frequencies and then present to you the masking. So which is masking which, right? So if these two sounds are happening and it's a certain set of frequencies that are masking each other, like they're covering one another up, the software you could theoretically drag, and one of the softwares I have by Isotope does this. You could literally like kind of drag a knob and it will demask one from the other. So it's kind of like it starts to pull those frequencies out of one, so that the one that you feel is more important starts to pop through more. And the reason why I said that I think that's really cool is because for people who don't have the technical training or the ear training or the understanding, a tool like that is going to obviously make their shit sound better if they use it. But then also if you realize what it's doing and you learn about what it's doing from like a biological sense, like how your ears hear it, it will train your ears to be able to understand how to do that without that kind of tool set. Like you will hear, oh, when I want this thing to pop through, it doesn't pop through because something is covering it up, and your ears will learn how to identify what's covering it up. And then you, not only your ears, but your technical skills can make those adjustments to fix that.
Yeah, that's a lot of interesting points you brought up about how there's frequency masking, and I guess the opposite of that would be also frequency attunement, where our ears are more honed in for certain things.
Yes.
I've actually heard that that concept being applied to cats, actually, where cats, meaning cats meow a certain way, right?
Uh-huh.
And humans, like we hear that meow as like a toddler or a baby.
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
And so a lot of humans are drawn to cats because of how similar their meows are to babies.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I guess the frequency masking, the example I could think of is like living in New York and people just don't hear the subways anymore. But they're
Correct.
A new person there is like, this thing is so loud. But they're like, what are you talking about?
Yes, correct. Yeah, and there's you familiar? I'm not familiar in a scientific sense, but with the concept of entropy.
In what way can you explain?
So specific to music, there's this concept called harmonic entropy. And that's probably one of, and especially in the last few years, it's probably one of my favorite things about trying to advance what I'll describe as like the richness of like being able to make my music more rich or more full, or what a lot of people would say more professional.
I can attest to that being a listener, especially recently when I played some of your remixes from Further Love, right? Like, and then we weren't even like mixing the songs in a DJ set. We were just literally playing singles. Like, hey, here's this song playing, and the next song would play, right?
Yeah.
So I noticed that a lot of your songs, even though it's coming from a stereo boombox in one particular location of the room, right? But those tracks filled the room in a certain way where it felt like I was like in the sound. You know what I mean?
Yeah, actually, my For the Love stuff. So for the folks not familiar with that, what you're referencing, my For the Love stuff is like my white label edits bootleg. So a lot of the music, it's like 50-50 where the music might be original music that I'm creating or composing, and I'm taking a main idea from another song, and I'm kind of doing a mashup that's not like official. It's like I'm not working with that artist, or I haven't been hired to work on it. It's like culturally in house music, how I grew up is like the concept of a white label, essentially a record with no label, where it's like a version of something that you might know, like a famous singer or something, but it's not official. It's like, for all intents and purposes, it's more or less like hypothetically something that could be illegal. But like, my For the Love series is my white label series that I give away. And one of the things that I try to do with it, besides maybe create a new idea, is I do try to provide a new harmonic take on things. And a lot of the times sometimes that's how it starts, where I hear a song and I'm like, oh man, if this song just had this harmonic balance difference and it had these extra few bits, this would be not necessarily a whole new thing, but what's great about it would be even better to me, in my opinion. So sometimes that's how the idea even starts. And what I was kind of getting at with that is this idea of harmonic entropy. So entropy being like lack of order, in which is like, in a lot of ways could be introducing randomness or shit. Like it could be organized chaos. It kind of just depends on, I guess, how you look at it. But harmonic entropy, in the way that I would approach the idea is or how I look at it with how I approach things rather is, I've learned that taking a sound and trying to boost or subtract from a sound doesn't always get you a better result. So,
Are you talking about the volume or the?
Yes, essentially, but volume in terms of like frequency spectrum. So when I was like starting to learn, music and engineering and things like this, it's kind of like if you had a guitar and you're like, oh, I wish the guitar sounded more bright. Like you reach for this knob, and everybody understands this for the most part. You reach for the knob that says like treble on the stereo and like you turn it up and things start to sound more bright. Or you want more boom, you reach for the knob that says bass. Or it's too bassy, you reach for the knob, turn it down, right? These attenuations that are taking place are specific volume adjustments to certain frequency ranges, right? So if you think about the most common one that almost everybody can identify with, even if they have no actual understanding of what it is, like bass, mid, and treble, or bass, mid, and high is like what you'll get in like a car stereo or your fucking iPod or whatever. So when I'm talking about harmonic entropy, rather than a knob that I'm turning up and down, let's say I want something to sound more bright. Instead of taking a knob and turning it up, I introduce harmonic entropy to that range of sound, that frequency range, the high range, to add what would be randomness to the harmonics, right? And that lifts it up because it introduces, I don't know exactly the science behind it, but it introduces enough differentiation that allows things to then somehow be understood in a different way by your ears. I don't want to say better or worse, because people are going to hear it differently. Different systems are going to, speakers or whatever, are going to represent that differently. But like what I'm getting at is, rather than just this push and pull type of approach with audio, I've taken a way more of a very additive type of approach, but with harmonics. And almost always it's a level of harmonic entropy. So for example, if I want to get a vocal to sound more clear, this is an example I just gave with AI, harmonic masking, right? Where it's like something's masking another thing. Well, maybe the reason why it's masking is because my ear was drawn to this thing that sounded really dope. It just happens to be in the same kind of place that the vocal is, right? So now I'm not getting the beauty of the vocal that I wanted, but I'm getting a lot of the beauty of this other sound that I've created or chosen. And now the two can't live in the same world. Well, that's fucked up because I like both of them. Well, how do I avoid that? Well, remove one. Sometimes that's the solution. You just have to like cut your losses and move on. But if you introduce harmonic entropy, where maybe I add, and this is a very common trick, you add to the most intelligible ranges of the vocal, the things that we hear the most out of the lyrical idea of like the word that they're saying or whatever, the consonant or the vowel or the inflection. I add in essentially noise, like static or whatever, so that when their vocal is happening, those ranges of frequencies also have this essentially what is not pleasing to our ear, but because it's just sprinkled, it's like, powdered sugar, so to speak, it's just the taste on top. All of a sudden it pops out. We haven't removed anything. We've actually introduced more bullshit, but really we've introduced randomness. Almost always it's like a level of randomness against the original piece of information. And all of a sudden it comes to us and we've made no sacrifices, and it's just, yes, the overall result is different than if we maybe made a sacrifice and pulled something back, and both results can be great. It just depends on what you're after at the end. There's pardon the expression, but there's like multiple ways to skin the whatever.
Yeah. So how I am trying to understand what you're telling me, it reminds me of photography, right? Whereas some people don't like the digital look because it looks too sharp and too clean and too perfect. Whereas other people will, even if they're working with digital, they'll actively add in some noise, some grain, just to make it feel a little bit more organic, right?
It's exactly the same. In a visual arts world, and I say this from an education perspective of looking at like my wife and my good friends that are like real visual artists. I'm not, but there's like this concept of adding value. Right. So it's like you need a background. You need this background to hold a certain amount of weight in your composition. You're just adding, you might be adding in all kinds of weird shit. I think of the Bob Ross of him just being like, we're going to do this and make these strokes and da-da-da. And it's like, when you look at it just being there, it's like, the fuck is that? But then once it's a part of the full composition, it makes it holds its value, right? Because you added these things to that to be able to put that value in there. And it's exactly the same thing like in the photography or a videography, or I guess it's technically the same, like at the end of the day, in that realm of like, yeah, you add in a bit of noise or you add in a bit of motion blur, or whatever it is to make that thing feel more of whatever it is that you want to convey, because it's always a matter of taste.
That's a very interesting point. I hadn't thought about the concept of a focal point to sound before, but that's what I'm kind of getting from
100%.
What you're telling me, because a realistic image or how our eyes are naturally attuned to work is like whatever you're looking at stays in focus, right? Whatever you're not looking at is not in focus. The whole thing isn't in focus the whole time. No. So applying that to like sound, for example, some things are out of focus, some things are in focus.
Yes, correct.
Wow, that's a very interesting
because some things are there to add the value and some things are there to be the focal point. And that's subjective, depending on what, and here's the other thing is like, the more you learn what's correct and not correct, the more beneficial it is for you to determine artistically what you want to be correct and not correct. So what I mean by that is like, when I was learning how to produce or like engineer vocals, because that became like a point of like, because I like making fucking weird sounding abrasive dance music, but I also like to make stuff that feels sweet and soulful and someone could sing or whistle it in the shower, or, when they're getting ready in the morning and be humming a melody. Like, I like all the things in music. So once I got to a point where I was like, how do I have a vocal present itself like it's the most important thing? I realized like, this is fucking really difficult. It's very difficult. Human voice is very difficult to work with in audio, in my opinion. And the result of that was like a lot of me trying to study and learn how to use vocals. And there's so many, this is the way you do X, Y, and Z. This is how you do this. This is, it's like very scientific. This is what you do so you can get this result. This is the way to do it. It's kind of like when I was learning, it was like very matter of fact. And this is all self-taught. It's like me finding the information, right? And the more the more I learned the correct way and the more I approached doing things the correct way, the more I would get to the point where I was like, this is starting to work, but is this always the best way I can approach this creatively, like artistically, to get a good result? Like a good example, Peven Everette's music is amazing. And, in the world that I live in with the type of music that I'm most known for, I would say I live in that ecosystem of like, you could hear a song that I made in a lot of cases in the same night that you could hear a Peven Everette song. And specifically the Peven Everette type music that's like going to be house music or versions of his songs that are more of like your up-tempo stuff. Cause he does R&B stuff, right? Too. But a lot of that stuff, especially with what you'll hear of his vocal, it's not correct. From like if you were to compare it to like how a pop song's vocal would be done, people would say, oh, most of the time, the way the pop vocal is done is the correct way. The way that you hear Peven's stuff is not the correct way.
Can you elaborate on what correct means compared to what's the standard?
I would say things like a big standard would be it having a consistency of where it lives in your focal point of your audio reference. His vocal might not always live in the same point. As he's singing, sometimes it'll be less in focus, more in focus, too in focus, not as in focus. Also the intelligibility, so like the intelligibility of what he's saying, like understanding what he's saying. Not because he's using slang or metaphor, but like the word he says. You might hear him saying something like, I like to eat beans. What does that mean? But he's not saying that. But that's what you're hearing because the intelligibility of the lyric isn't maybe quite as correct because of how the vocal's being processed.
And would you say that's an intentional artistic choice, or it's like a limitation of however they're engineering?
I don't know. I can't say because I'm not the people that
how would you perceive it then?
A lot of times I would perceive it as they're doing what they know how to do. Yeah. 99% of the time I feel like if something doesn't sound as good as you think it should, it's because that person is just doing the best job that they know how.
So for example, like in the case of Theo Parrish, he'll actively try to make his records sound maybe scratchy at times, or even overblown,
I have no idea.
Yeah. And
I don't know. I don't know if that's intentional or if that's just the way it is and he doesn't give a fuck. I don't know.
Yeah. So like what I guess my perception of it is I come to associate that sound with Theo Parrish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's suggestive of an intentional thing versus he just not aware of it, or he can't do any better. But that's all my perception. Right?
Yeah. I mean, only the person that does the thing would be able to answer that for you.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, like there's things that if you heard of mine from a certain song and you're like, you developed this opinion of like the way it sounds like this, and you have this descriptor of it. And you'd be like, oh, that must be intentional. And then you ask me about it. I might listen to it and be like, no, that was a limitation of like where I was at. And I would have done that differently now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. I see this in a lot of art fans where like the fan, whether it's on the message board or a YouTube video, like the fans might have some super deep, life-changing interpretation of what happened there.
Yep.
And they're just like, oh yeah, I see got that by mistake.
Yep. Yeah. And that's actually... that sums it all up. Like you make art so other people can develop an opinion about it.
Yeah. You know Jay's Art Remote.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like one of my favorite mixes by him back in the day, right? He begins to mix by saying, "Yo, who the fuck is this?" All right. And then I actually asked him about that one time because I saw him in person. And I was like, hey man, like tell me what happened there. Like what do you mean by that, right? He said, oh yeah, I started the mix and someone called me for like a marketing call. And so he answered the phone and said, yo, who the fuck is this?
Yeah. Yeah. And then you develop whatever it is, that you develop your opinion, your story. It could be deep. It could be very surface level.
When did you start tapping into the harmonic entropy?
Harmonic entropy, yeah.
Yeah. When did you actively walk towards that? And what made you want to do that? What made you notice?
Yeah. So I started to use compression not for the effects of compression, but for the effects of color and saturation. So when I started to do stuff for the sake of really, a lot of like really famous mix engineers I've heard say this in one way or another, but a really good mix is a lot of the times lots of little tiny things, like hundreds or thousands of little tiny things adding up to this grand thing, rather than like two big motions of something create this amazing thing. Right. And these are the post-production people. Like these are the people that, mix records, right? That's their job. It's like they mix records. So, I study them. I don't have the desire to be like some grand mixer, or some grand engineer, but like the line that I walk because of the style of music I make, I'm like walking a line where I have to be an engineer, but I'm a producer. And a lot of times there is no line. It's completely blurred because the effect of me being able to produce something requires it to be engineered a certain way. So when I started realizing the sum of lots of little things is a greater whole, I started introducing compression for the sake of the algorithm that because it's virtual. I'm not dealing with hardware. This virtual thing is introducing this harmonic entropy, this distortion or randomness that is meant to simulate the way a fucking tube circuit worked in an amplifier or a transistor on a board. Or
would you say there's any similarity as far as like why some people are diehard vinyl fans? Because there's a certain like...
Yeah, a big reason why there's two big reasons in my opinion why people... Well, three big reasons why people are diehard vinyl fans. Number one, it's a physical thing that they have a memory that's associated to. Like they look at a cover, they associate a physical visual reference that there's biological, real world ass shit. They touch it, they see it, they remember it. Two, vinyl records by nature, in order for them to be audible and for them to be listenable, have to be more dynamic than modern digital music, meaning they have to have more range from what's quiet and what's loud. Because there's a physical thing that happens with the needle going up and down, left to right. If everything is the way we hear digital files, we've become accustomed to hearing digital music played. Everything's kind of, there's generally less dynamic range when we're talking about like dance music. There's less dynamic range where your loud points are as loud as your soft points a lot of the times, right? So you have less range there. So we actually biologically like, on average, more dynamic range when we're listening to something. If we're just trying to like feel an energy, it's a whole different story. But like when we're listening to something, dynamic range is pleasing to us. And I know this, I'll get to the last thing, why people like vinyl, but the reason why I know this is because I have to, and my career hasn't taken off to the stars where I can just be killing it with my music one day, hopefully. But I engineer for people, a few clients a month, whether it's mixing, mastering, whatever. And when I have someone that's quite a bit more new to the mastering process, one of the big parts in digital mastering is about making the song loud enough so you're decreasing the dynamic range, so that it feels like it's loud enough next to another song. And sometimes they'll give me a few songs to master, and one will be, I will make it much louder because of the value that's been given to me, what's been done in their song, and what I'm able to pull out of it for the style of music that is. And then the other song that they give me, in order for me to make it the same level of perceived loudness, I have to ruin a lot of the good things about it, because the dynamic range is what makes it better. And I won't do that unless they force me to do that. I will do, my initial reaction is to preserve what makes it good and to give it back where it's more finalized, it's louder, but I'm preserving things versus the other song they gave me. And then they go, oh, this one's not loud enough. It's very noticeable. I have to turn it up a lot more. And I'll tell them, okay, I'm going to do this. I do it again for them. I make it really loud. And then I say, hey, take both of them, put them in your workstation. And I want you to go back and forth between them. Take the one that I'm saying is louder, go back and forth between them and turn the louder one down. Keep turning it down until they're the same volume. To your ear, where you hit a button and you listen to one, listen to the other. They're the same volume. Then turn both of those bitches up to where it's nice and loud and see which one you like better. Because the perceived volume now is the same, but the actual volume of when it hits your ears and your body through your speaker system is now up to you. You control the volume, right? And then every single time, I've never had a client come back to me and go, oh, I like the one that's not as loud, right? It has more dynamic range. And they're like, why is that? I'm like, I don't know. It's just something that we like better.
Yeah, for me, when I think of dynamic range, whether it's I guess in this case sound or with a visual reference like photography, for example, I perceive higher dynamic range as more dimension.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same.
Yeah, so I think we naturally are living in the 3D space. So to perceive more dimension in the art form, I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy it, and I suspect that other people enjoy it too.
Yeah, and here's like specific to the music world, that, you know, this world that I'm living in and where my taste is coming from with this concept is like, I tell them like, yeah, maybe if they're just flipping through songs, this one's gonna sound low, but if it's still done correctly, yeah, it might be more quiet if you're flipping through shit. But if you're making music for a DJ to play, the whole reason why people, and this has been around since this, end of the 70s, really, the whole thing is like you have a piece of hardware that allows you to amplify the signal, or rather preamplify the signal to be then sent out through an amplified set of electronics. Like, you control how loud it's going to be. The DJ or the person, performing the music, like they control how loud, and the engineer, if it's, the venue or whatever, like they control how loud that impact is. Why does your song need to get rid of all of the good shit about it by lowering the dimension just because when someone's flipping from one song to another, you need to have the same volume? That makes no sense to me. Like, if something's too loud and somebody wants it, if something's too loud from where they're playing, they're going to turn something down. And this whole idea of perceived loudness, and I'm obviously digressing a bit from my last point of why I think vinyl is important, or why people like vinyl. It's like they introduced, from what I understand, like a measurement rule like in the 80s or 90s, or maybe it was before that, where like TV commercials would come in so fucking loud versus the content that you were watching. So there was like some kind of like broadcast standard. It was like, your commercials cannot be louder than this measurement. They use a particular standard. I forget the exact name, IBU something or other, but it's like, there's a meter, and it's like, it needs to be, this is the maximum whatever at the meter. So that way the jumps in volume wouldn't be these drastic things, because it's like, the commercial comes in loud as fuck and you're in the other room, you're going to like, hear it. It's different these days in terms of like the standards still exist, but it's, not obviously being honored quite the same because television is not quite the same. But like these things, is just like these principles of what like volume does. A record has that dynamic range is what I was getting at. Like, has to, because it'll sound like dog shit. The needle will literally fucking jump off the record if the dynamic range isn't under control, or rather if the dynamic range doesn't exist. a certain frequency will vibrate or skip the needle off the fucking record. It'll literally pop off. And then the last thing I was going to say, which is where we're at with harmonic entropy, is records, because it's there's a physical thing happening. You're literally vibrating something. By the nature of you're reading a physical medium, you're getting noise coming from that medium, whether it's the physical groove and how it was cut and the imperfections, whether it's the needle, how worn out or not worn out it is, how exact or not, the electricity signal coming in from the house, like how much. In America, we have a 50 hertz system, right? So it's like how much of those cycles of electricity is being introduced into the signal of what we're hearing. It may not be completely audible, but it's introducing a bit of could be randomness, or it could be just another harmonic that's consistent that gets added to the signal. All these things, the speakers, how those are speakers respond, and how the electricity is cycling through those speakers. Like all of that is imperfect. How much humidity is in the air, and how that affects the way that the air is, the cycles of air that get moved around to where how it tickles our little fucking eardrum. Like all that has an impact.
Wow, I actually was aware of a lot of things you mentioned, but I didn't know humidity could play an effect.
Yeah, for sure it should.
Yeah,
I would imagine.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know the science, but I mean, I understand the principle.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So. I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on sampling and remixing, especially with regards to how things have been done, and also where AI comes into mix? Like, what's to stop somebody from saying, "Oh yeah, let me make a Onsulati track in the style of Coflo, but in a Theo Parrish signature or something like that?"
Like, do you mean like this is
because, for example, with visual art. Right now, it's a big topic where a lot of artists is like, oh yeah, like this thing is sampling or taking in my creation, and then now other people are creating all these things in my style, but I'm not getting anything from that, right? Or it's kind of devalue what I do.
Yeah. So in that regard, that's tough. That's really tough. It's like part of me is like, so fucking what? And the reason why a part of me is like, so fucking what, is because the human spirit needs to create. So people that are going to live to put their hands in the clay, so to speak, that's not going to really, it kind of fucking sucks that it makes it so accessible, but like, that's not a new thing. It's not an AI thing. Like, if you draw some shit and it looks like Keith Haring, it looks like Keith Haring. Like, people have been fucking doing that kind of shit forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess the difference is like now you're not drawing, you're just entering some prompts, command lines,
Yep.
And then AI is doing it for you. So it's like,
yeah, but like, why it sucks is the same as you copying someone and drawing or producing a song to sound just like, it's the same. Yeah, it's way easier, which stings a little bit more for sure that you're copying somebody else's shit. But I mean, you can't stop someone from copying somebody else. There's nothing you can do. We have copyright law that helps, you know what I mean? But like, I'm not pro copy other people. I don't want people to misconstrue like what I'm saying. I think one of the illest things about blues music is the fact that you're kind of just copying certain ideas over and over again. Because rather than the idea being the heavy focus of the style of music, the focus is the feeling of the intention that gets put into the performance of it. So let me explain myself. So in blues music, I mean, there's various different styles and ways, and I'm not a blues musician. But I do have an affection for the blues, and I hope one day that I learn to play and write the blues. I think that would be, it's definitely going to be something that's going to be a part of my life as I grow older, because I don't know, I have an affinity for it. There's a musical format. What's called one of them, 12-bar blues. It's in a particular key, and it doesn't even matter, because even that is like, whether something's in a particular key or another key, it's like, yeah, it feels different, but you're just moving the interval. So you're not even really changing that much other than how we perceive what we're here. This starts to get really philosophical, I guess. But anyways, you have 12-bar blues. It has a particular key. You play this section for so many bars. Or sorry, you play this chord or whatever this thing is for so many bars. Then you move to this other thing, usually for so many bars, back to this thing for so many bars, then to this other thing for a few bars, back to this one for a few bars, and then you turn it back around and come back to the original thing, right? There's a way to do it, and people have been, this is one way, there's a few ways, like this particular standardization, there's people that have been doing that for fucking ever. It's such a dope American art form. The focus isn't on that thing that everybody's copying. The focus is on the emotion that people are able to create with this thing that everybody's copying, right? So like, I guess when it comes to like being able to copy other people's shit, whether it's a push of a button like a command prompt, or you're literally painstakingly trying to recreate it, like, we fucking know, as long as we're still meat sacks and not computers, we still know, we feel a difference of things. We develop a sense of taste, and I don't want to call authenticity, because that's not what it is. It's like we recognize a thing and enjoy a particular thing. It's undeniable. If Theo Parrish is your thing, we use Theo Parrish as the example. If Theo Parrish is your thing, what he does and what he creates is your thing, you're like, you have a sense of attachment, and you don't know why. And someone enters a command prompt and they spit out a thing that sounds like a Theo Parrish, you might recognize that it sounds like a Theo Parrish, but chances are it won't have the same actual emotional connection to you. And when I look at AI art and stuff, it's like, it happened very quickly to where you'd see stuff being generated in AI art, and if there's no human intervention, meaning there's no augmentation of a human coming in and adding their own value, it's like when I see something, it might be like, I look at it, I'm like, it's fucking cool, but it immediately becomes cold. Like I'm already, and I'm not a massive art fan. I definitely like art, and my wife and I collect art, but like, I already am like, is sterile, even though it's this crazy ass fucking thing I'm looking at, And a lot of the times when I really enjoy like AI art as an example, and I have yet to come across this in music, but like visually, is when a human has sat down and created this series, like dozens of these AI images that all feel like they exist in this thing. Because now I'm not looking at each one and going, wow, this one's dope, this one's dope. I'm looking at this thing that this human thought to do and then use the computer to get this result. So it's like, it gets removed from just the piece of art that they didn't make themselves, but they directed to be made in this whole like orchestration of all these images. For example, are you familiar with Alex Gray? Amazing artist, right? I've seen hella people do AI art in the style of Alex Gray. And then I've seen some people that have came up with these concepts. I can't remember the name of the whatever person, because they've done all these different iterations on Instagram or whatever. But they had this whole thing that was like in the style of Alex Gray. And it was derived from, it was like plants and objects that are made from like trees and natural things. And like, it was like this whole landscape, and even like the color kind of composition and stuff is very Alex Gray-y and very psychedelic. And I just remember looking at it going like, what a cool concept. Like immediately when I looked at it, I'm like, Alex Gray, but I knew it wasn't Alex Gray, right? But like when I zoomed out, because this is a digital thing, it's not a real physical thing. When I zoomed out and looked at all these ideas that they had, that they're obviously doing in the style of Alex Gray, I was like, this is fucking cool ass concept. It's like, I got the artistic idea because I could see where the human was interacting with it versus like them doing a thing in the style of Alex Gray and then trying to do a print of it and pass it off on some shit. You know, it's like the collective idea of the thing was more impressive. It's like, you're not going to go shit on someone at the farmer's market for making a cupcake, but like people are making cupcakes forever. You know, but if you got like, you look at the landscape of it and maybe they've got like their own little brand and they got their own like way of presenting it and stuff. Like you look at the whole thing and then it also tastes good. It's a mouthful of sugar, right? It's like, it also, you know, like you have to look at the things a little differently. And I don't know. It's also too, because I also hear people making music. I do A&R work, right? For a record label where I constantly listen to demos of people wanting to license music to us. And I constantly hear people not even trying to make something original. They are, by virtue of them trying to make music. They're making something original, but they're trying so hard to just sound like something else. And I don't listen to it and go, they fucking suck. They're just not even trying to be original. Rather, I listen to it and go, oh, I hope that they put in the effort one day to learn how to be better at this. Because it just, to me, just sounds like they're just not good at it. So of course they're going to do something that everybody else has already done. I mean, that's how I get better at shit. You know, I'm not over here like wake up like especially when I first started, I wasn't over here like gonna do the coolest shit. I'm gonna take this fucking thing and rip it in half and it's gonna make this sound and I'm gonna mangle it. It's like immediately I'm trying my best to figure out how to do something that one of my heroes has done of my favorite records. Of course. You know, how do I get better at playing? One of my favorite exercises of actually practicing, because I'm a horrible student of playing piano, but one of my favorite things to learn is how to play other people's music. Because it teaches me something else that I probably could have came across if I just studied in a more traditional way. But it's like, use my ears, figure it out. Yeah, it's not exactly like them, but like I'm already along the way of trying to copy them, discovering my own identity of how I could do something with my own capability at the time as I continue to get better.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of interesting points. One of which I'm hearing is how to survive or make it as an artist, both artistically, right, with the originality direction and also commercially. Because recently I was watching a video on how there's a lot of songs nowadays that will be a certain length and maybe even be a certain loudness and remove the dynamics based on the probability of the algorithm boosting their song or not, right?
Yeah, totally.
Because I guess people's attention spans have gotten shorter, so they want the hook or the drop or whatever it is like right away versus like a longer song, for example. Like a 10-minute song may not get as much visibility as like a 3-minute and 30-second song.
Yeah, those are interesting points that I agree with in part, but I also have kind of developed a new opinion about that in the last few years. I don't think it's people's attention span. I think it's the medium in terms of what they're consuming and where. So for example, it's more advantageous from a analytical or like a marketing game if you're in a certain world of music or the industry to say I have 1 million streams on Spotify. Super important. For the kind of music I make, that doesn't really matter. It would be great, but it doesn't really matter. It's actually more important for the music that I make that if I was able to press 1,000 records and 1,000 of those records sold out very quickly, that would be far more impressive. It would speak mounds to the fan base, like the type of fan base that is trying to support and be a part of what I do, right? It's just a different factor. Little sister, little brother might be more into this person that has, this new song has 2 million streams. Like it's a medium versus taste for what it is. And obviously there's meta mode, right? Where it's like 1 million streams, sold 5,000 pieces of wax, and it's a 10-minute song and everybody listens to it on repeat. Like, of course there's meta mode for everything, right? I don't want to pretend like one always trumps the other, but like it's a matter of taste for what it is. And you brought up a good point where like algorithmically certain things are going to look better. Like higher retention rates are almost always going to be better in this day in the algorithm world, right? So it's like the more somebody watches, the more somebody repeats something, like this ranks into the value of something. The more people engage with something, if it has engagement points, like all these things are like what the machine values in terms of like how the human works with it. So the algorithm then puts it in front of the human's face more. I think that again is very medium drive, because like I know for a fucking fact that if I buy a record and I plan on listening to the record, as I'm cleaning the house or sitting back, trying to unwind or whatever and just kind of like chill out, it would piss me off if a really good song was only a minute long, right? Versus if I'm like, I don't know, like driving on a road trip to LA, I might want to hear like a bunch of shit, and maybe for the particular hour or whatever, I kind of want to hear like some stuff where it's like changing. I want to kind of get a smorgasbord of things. So if I'm listening to songs 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and all of a sudden I hit like a 20-minute song and I'm like, fuck, like I was kind of hoping we'd go to something else, like a new genre or a new feeling. Or I've been listening to this guy talk about his girlfriend that he lost for like the last 10 minutes. Like I want to hear a new song. So I think, I used to think it was like, oh, people's attention spans, but I don't think that's the case. I really think it's not the human attention span has changed. I think that we have an appetite based off the medium. When I open this thing, I expect something more condensed.
That's a great point that you brought up, and I hadn't considered before, is now we have access to a new medium that never previously existed,
right,
in all of humankind, pretty much, right? Human history, which is the smartphone. Someone's holding it in their hands. And obviously, when you're holding something in your hand, it makes more sense for it's something to be short, because you may only have like 5 seconds here, 10 seconds here, 1 minute here,
Yeah, it just depends. And we see different brands of things or services or locations, like let's call it like a Spotify, YouTube, or whatever, where maybe the general fan base has for a particular thing wants this more condensed thing from this, like when Vine was really popular, it's like people went to Vine knowing what they were getting. It's not because people's attention spans disappeared. It's because this is a new form of art that they were consuming. People go to Instagram, and even though video is a big thing on Instagram now, people, I think, still generally would go to Instagram because they want to consume a visual with like this mini forum that takes place against brands, people, or whatever that they follow. Right? Like I'm not a social media expert, but like I know from my friends that are kind of in that industry, like physical fitness on Instagram is a big thing. So, for whatever reason, there's a real big appetite for how people are starting to associate in certain, whether it's industries, topics of information or art or whatever, they're associating certain things with that medium. I mean, it's technically the same medium, right? Like a YouTube versus an Instagram is technically the same medium on your phone, whatever, but look at it as like, you look at the medium as like a different storefront, kind of, so to speak. So it's like you get an attention for whatever that thing is. Like I don't open up Instagram and expect to go listen to my favorite podcast. I don't know if you could do like an hour of video on Instagram. I don't know the rules, to be honest, but I'm just saying like that's not where I would go.
Yeah. So my personal take is I wouldn't either. And because on Instagram, the search sucks, right? So even if there was a long video, and I've seen plenty of IG Live interviews or whatever sessions, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever, how long, but I feel like it's a good effort. Although after that moment, the next day, the next week, that contribution of content is gone. like you don't really search for old stuff on Instagram. It's just whatever in someone's feed, you know.
Yeah, or like I listen to a few podcasts on Spotify. And there's video, but a lot of times that's not usually I'll go listen to it on Spotify. I'll automatically, if I want to listen to the same podcast on video, so I might go to YouTube if it exists there. There's no real reason because they're both going to do the same thing.
Yeah, so my personal reason for why I would choose Spotify or YouTube for a video-based podcast is on YouTube, there's much more social engagement with like other commentary, right? And depending on the nature of the comment, it could be very, very valuable. You might have like an industry expert just chiming in to drop some deep fact, right? Whereas on Spotify, it's just really you and the content, and there's really no outside.
Got you. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, at least for me, case in point is the medium is going to dictate how we perceive the thing. So if we're talking about music, I don't see people's attention spans being shortened for the sensibility of music. It's just a matter of what it is. And this is the same thing with, for instance, like I'll make a record and it might be a 5-minute record, and really 4 minutes of it is like the meat and potatoes. And then I'll do a record that's 10 minutes long. And the whole thing to me is all meat and potatoes. But it's like, how can 10 minutes be meat and potatoes when the other one, it's like 5 minutes, 4 minutes of it was meat and potatoes? And why is there why is one half, but even less than half is the meat and potatoes? And it's because my intention for how that was to be consumed is like completely different. One, I expect people to put on a record, drop the needle, and listen to it from start to finish. Or actually, in cases, if I'm doing something really long, I'm thinking, how would someone create like a theater piece to it? You know, like how would somebody dance to this in this like certain setting, versus I want a DJ to like creatively use this, maybe all 4 minutes, but maybe only 2 minutes of it. How are they going to use this song as a tool to like create a moment in the night? You know, I don't think it's a attention span thing. It's a purpose of like where you expect that to be. If people are thinking about doing something for an attention span, I think unless it really fuels them creatively, people's attentions are only 1:30 of music. So I need to satisfy that. And that gives them a fire, not just the fact that it's a business decision or whatever, but it gives them the fire to be creative. So they do something with 1:30. Cool. That's now a new set of rules that you've given yourself to like try to work within. And that's an interesting artistic exercise. But it also, if that's like a struggle, you're like, fucking, I don't want to fucking do 1:30. Like, this is fucking bullshit that I'm trying to do this. Well, you're fucking going about it wrong. You know what I mean? Like, you are now hell of approaching this wrong. You really fucked that up. You should be making your 5-minute songs. If you think that people are about that 1:30, fuck off. You know what I mean? Like, you have to have the right intention. I'm always about artistic challenge. I think that's super cool. I've been doing this series. It's a practice that I've actually been doing for a while, for a few years, but now I'm like kind of doing it as like a content exercise of like working out new ideas, where I'm like taking about a minute of dance and I'm trying to score a song to that. It's like I'm remixing what that person did to another song. I'm composing something. So I'm like remixing their dance, even though they're dancing the way they dance. I'm just giving it a new sound for them to dance to. And that's like, it's very constructive because it's only a certain amount of time. And I'm working within the realms of like trying to react to the movements they're doing, you know, or juxtapose what they're doing.
I guess that's the other advantage of wanting to maintain someone's attention span is I've seen like a increase in the quality of content within less time. Right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So
different art form.
There's like the positivity of now people's time are valued differently, right? Versus like, hey, this person doesn't have an hour to give to you. They might have like 1 minute. What can you do in that 1 minute that delivers your message that you would have done in 1 hour?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I would imagine that people that are doing that and are getting better at it, I would imagine that that's something that they enjoy putting that creative energy into.
Yeah, so let's talk about also surviving commercially as an artist in the music side. Have you seen trends change or the industry change much before and I guess post AI, such as nowadays if you stream on a platform, let's say Spotify, for example, right? There's like the radio function where you can listen to new artists. So it seems like there's less of a need for even radio DJs to, because I personally don't know anyone to listen to the radio anymore to begin with, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. I've also seen other examples where certain companies, maybe Spotify, I don't know, are considering just having AI generating music, so you don't need to have any artists. It's just all, and they have all of the source material already, right? So it's like they're in a position to do all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have two thoughts on that. One, have I noticed any differences? I can't really comment, to be honest, because I haven't been doing music professionally long enough with a level of success. Like, I don't really have success in the digital musical space. Like in terms of like numbers and value, to where I'm like, if I do more of this, it's like really sustaining. I just don't have the success to be able to comment on a before or after. I only live in the now, so to speak. But I can tell you from like, digging into like the whole AI radio being generated from like existing music that's already out there. I think that's fantastic. I think the more ways you can discover new music, or in some cases, just kind of reinvigorate the taste that you're already into, or if it keeps feeding you stuff that you're already into or whatever.
Yeah. So there's like two parts I want to.
Yeah. So the first part is like, hitting a button and it generates a radio of like music that's out there based off of your prompt or your taste or a song or whatever. I think that's super dope, because discoverability, I think, is super duper important. I think that's also equally as important to still have people to expose you to new music by their taste being applied to you, because you should be in positions where you don't like things. Like, it's whacked for everything to always be you like it. You need dynamics in your life.
Contrast,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, you need entropy. You need lack of order. Right? Like you have to have the contrast. So having a human hit you with like 30 minutes of a particular thing and you're like, this is great, man. This person's got great taste. What an amazing, ear this person has. And then they hit you with 15 minutes of like some shit where you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, it's good because maybe they're not necessarily getting you to like something new, but they're reaffirming like the taste difference. So it's like when you go back to stuff that you like or introduced to new stuff that you like, the taste is sweeter, right?
Personally, I really enjoyed when someone introduces me a song that I didn't know I would enjoy, or I didn't know could sound like that, and just the process of hearing that new sound literally opened my mind.
Yeah. So, and then to your second question is like, well, what about the AI radio that just generates music that's like new music? They're just generating music. It's just generating music because it has all the parameters, it has all the styles and all that stuff. I think it's great. Why is it great? Because it's not going to be as good as the actual human making it. It's not. There's no fucking way. Maybe technically and mathematically and to some degree the emotional availability of what a happy song feels like or what a sad song feels like, or all these things. I think it's great because it's going to give us that contrast again to when something's really good. We've already done this in America. We've already done this with a lot of industry. Unfortunately, our food industry is like felt this the most, in my opinion, like on like a day-to-day. It's like fast food and the availability of like processed food, right? It's like, I think it's great that we have processed food. I wouldn't recommend people consume it all the time, but it's great that we have it because of the availability of it, the thing that you can get from it. But like, once you've had it and you actually have a real version of that thing, you really understand the difference when the human is involved that grew the real fucking food, cooked it the real way, prepared it the real way, and you consumed it in a way where it's like you sat down to consume it to get the nourishment from it. Like it's if we don't have the comparison, for these things are, obviously I use the food analogy because it's an easy line to draw, like the comparison. It's not the same thing when it comes to art. Obviously there's culinary arts, which I can't speak on, but how would you know what your taste is if you didn't have options? So like, to me, AI generated fucking bullshit in music, like that's great. There's actually people in this world who don't listen to music. I know it's weird, but there are people, and that's fine. And the AI shit might satisfy a lot of what's needed. Here's the thing, because I'm doing a lot of stuff right now in sync music, the sync music industry. I hope maybe I'll find some business in that world, but I'm learning a lot about that world currently, and you could see how AI generated shit could help find affordable things for a lot of that industry to have background music for stuff, right? Where humans will lose out on opportunity. But then there are going to be people that need to do some really impactful shit because they need to have the right trailer. They need to have the right feeling in this video game or this movie clip or whatever. And you will fucking need a real artistic creation that a human made, because the computer won't give it to you. Same example I was giving you with these fucking AI generated in the style of Alex Gray or style of Keith Haring. Might look really cool, but you become numb to it instantly because you recognize what it is. I don't know if computers will ever get to the level of creativity and emotion that a human can express. I don't think it'll ever happen. I'm not pessimistic like that.
Yeah, I guess the example you're thinking of as far as the jobs being displaced reminds me of how there used to be someone operating the different floors in the elevator, or when you call in, I guess the phone company, they have like operators, like, hey, let me plug this thing into this thing.
Farming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much rural America has disappeared because of, it take dozens of people to work a bunch of acres of farmland where it takes one person in their tractors or whatever. Like we've seen technology displace human things for a long time.
Yeah. I also guess go back to the food analogy. One thing besides having real food versus processed food that I'm learning more about recently is I guess in real food, especially like real meat, there's certain things in that food that's very beneficial for your microbiome, your gut bacteria, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not just like this ingredient by itself. There's something in there, like maybe beneficial bacteria that's healthy for you.
Yes.
And I guess in your example, it's similar to having that harmonic entropy in a song that someone decided to put in there. It's something more organic about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's stuff that is just undeniable that a human contributes. I mean, people act like AI is people want to act like software, whether it's AI or whatever, doesn't have human intervention. Like I know AI is like some far out shit, and I'm definitely not educated to be like the person who's speaking on how things work or whatever, but I came from working in the software industry, and like software is an art form. And anybody who doesn't think so has never made anything in software. Like the creativity that goes into how you architect something or problem solve or make something efficient or even manifest something that doesn't exist that all of a sudden exists. Like there's an incredible amount of artistic value that gets put into that stuff.
Yeah, so let's talk about the human element within all this, right? So one thing I wonder about is as I see DJs gain success, whether in the gigs that they're playing or the level of financial success that they have, right? So from playing in a small venue to playing in like a massive 50,000 crowd, whatever, like how do you think like someone can maintain a connection to either their artistic integrity, I guess the soul or the human element? Because as a DJ and you read the crowd, how do you actually read a crowd, like a crowd like 20,000 people where everyone looks like tiny dots from far away?
I don't know, man. I've never done it, so I don't know. I don't know. Like I struggle with having the opportunity. Like when it comes to like performing, my music or music in front of people, like I don't have a lot of opportunity yet. So I've obviously done it more than nobody. So I have some experience, but like yeah, I don't know, but to maintain artistic integrity, I think when you're a real motherfucker, nothing changes you. I can't really elaborate this other than you just have to take my word for it. Like I can't give you scientific proof, but like I've had the privilege not only to meet, but to some degree at varying levels, build relationships with some of the people who I idolized growing up in music. And there's a number of them, and it's like, obviously they're amazing, but I'm like, I can see why they have longevity and why they're able to get their career to where they're at. Not only is their talent there, or their work ethic there, but their integrity about them doing what they do seems to be very artistically honest, and you can see that being portrayed in the way that they interact with people. I met people that, and built relationships with people that other people might say are like quite difficult people, or, they've got issues or whatever. And like, I've been able to build relationships with them, and I can see where the genius is and what they do and whatever shortcomings they have or don't have. I can see why that might be, but this is all to say, like, how do you maintain things as you go up? Like you're honest. You're honest with yourself. You're honest about what you do. And to some degree, you might hit a ceiling. At least this is the way that I look at it, is like you hit a ceiling, and the only reason why you hit the ceiling and why you don't surpass the ceiling is because you didn't recognize the ceiling wasn't there. So you weren't being honest with yourself,
Yeah, the DJ that comes to mind, and this is not to bring anyone down, but just like I guess an honest curiosity, is Black Coffee, right? I first saw him in LA maybe like over 10 years ago. It was just a tiny venue compared to what he's spinning at now. I remember that venue was like so hot that I had to stick my head out the window at the venue just because it was that sweaty, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and I remember having a blast at that party. And then I seen him more recent times at a huge festival, and then it seemed to be musically very different, something I couldn't associate to his original signature.
Sure.
And then to him, I think, was it selling out Madison Square Garden or whatever recently?
Crazy,
yes,
right?
It's like I have no idea what it's like to be him, right? But I wonder how does someone get that level of success but still be able to stay in tune to whatever it is their compass is? Because I've heard other stories about people going to like a Black Coffee event and not knowing Black Coffee is one dude. They're thinking, oh yeah, the group Black Coffee.
Right.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. So they're not even sure who this person is, but they're just going just because of the name.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because he's so I don't know him. I have a lot of friends that know him, and they say he's just awesome person. But like the way, using him as an example, being a really big fan of him back in the day, and I'm still a fan of him now for what he represents and what he's able to accomplish. I'm not super into his music as much these days. But that's all to say, like, maybe that's just where his artistic heart is at. And I don't know. I don't want to assume with anybody, definitely not him, that he's not staying true to who he is. I just think that there's a difference of what it is. So for example, and I'll just, give my very, very limited and shallow take on it, because I'm not like, me being a fan of Black Coffee is like, I'm not a super fan. So I don't really know enough to like really draw a lot from. But so for example, he did play a gig recently. I think it was in downtown in Oakland, and I didn't go. And I heard that a huge portion of his set was like a bunch of these classics and a bunch of this shit that like everybody loved. And I remember my friend telling me Like, yo, and my friend is like not up on anything new. Like, they're not into my music. They probably would be. They don't go past a certain point. It's like they kind of like were left in a little time capsule of like house music, right? And they were just like, he killed it. And I was like, really? Because like I keep hearing from people that they go and then he kind of like he plays like a style of music that they're not really into. You know, obviously the majority of the people that are going are into it, but like maybe some friends that I know are like, oh, I'm not really. They're like, yeah, man, he played X, Y, and Z. And I was like, whoa, he played that? Like, you know, some of his classics, you know, some of the stuff that I fell in love with his music for, you know? And I was like, oh, okay, so this is, you know, maybe this is situational depending on where he is and his audience. And maybe it's like, that's the good part of him as a performer and as an artist is he's able to understand where he should go. And maybe it's him reading the crowd. Maybe it's just what he wants to do, the way he wants to express his artistic ability because of what he thinks. And I guarantee Black Coffee is a human. There's times that he plays sets where it probably fucking sucks. And there are times that he plays sets where it's like God came down and kissed everybody on the forehead. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure like anybody, he's had bad days and good days with that kind of stuff. So he might make a choice, whether he can read the crowd or not. I don't know, because I don't know what it's like to play. You know, I've never even played to a room of 1,000 people, you know, so I don't know what it's like to have those experiences and how that works. But I can say from conversations that I've had, I'm like, he obviously has an artistic integrity to what he wants to do. And I do know from actual firsthand experience that his team, he has teams of people that work with him around, like, whether it's curation of music or whatever it is. And I'd imagine because he's so big, he probably gets, you know, the amount of people that probably try to give him shit to like play and listen to is probably just fucking insane. Because it's insane. The amount of shit that I get is fucking kind of crazy. And I'm nobody. And the amount of shit that I get is crazy. I can't even fucking fathom, you know, the amount of limitation of access that he probably has to like block out. So like, I know he has people that work with him to help for stuff. And very specifically, the reason why I know this is because they look for South African artists, you know, and he has, obviously he has a sense of pride for his country and what he's built and what he's been able to achieve, you know, with that country as a part of the flag that he waves, right? So it's like, I think it's really cool that he has people out there trying to curate the next South African artist, or, you know, opportunities for, like, you know, for him to be able to play this music from like the people in his country, you know. I think that to me speaks to volumes of the character that he is and like how true he is to like what he probably wants to do. And then also, I also have some firsthand experience that there's a South African artist who's a friend of mine who I'm starting to collaborate with, this guy named Floyd Levine. He just recently took him on tour with him. And it's like, Floyd's not a nobody, but he's not Black Coffee, you know? And he also doesn't live in South Africa. His mainstay now is in, I think it's, I forget what city, but it's in Germany. It's in Europe. And he, you know, he spends time back at home in Cape Town, but like, that's firsthand experience of me knowing somebody who's working with him. And it's like, there's an integrity to that for sure. He doesn't have to do that. He could easily fucking have Diplo or fucking whoever, whatever other big name is just going to sell even more tickets. You know what I mean? So it's all to say, like, I don't know how you maintain your artistic integrity other than you're either a real motherfucker or you're not, you know? I mean, I'm going to, you know.
So say if I was like, Coflo, I need you to spin for a 20,000 crowd at this mega festival. How would you approach that?
The same way I'm going to approach a room of 10 people.
So like, how would you really read a crowd in like a sea of 20,000 people? I don't really understand how that's possible.
I don't know. If I ever get that opportunity, I'll let you know how it goes. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know. Hypothetically, if they're cheering and making noise, does that mean I'm doing well? I don't know.
Yeah, because I don't know either, but that's why I'm so curious about like this connection between the crowd and the DJ, right? Which I think is an important connection to have.
I mean, like, I know from a musical sense, like biologically, how you can get payoff, tension and release. It's like one of the things that I think is easy to explain to somebody in music, whether they're new to music, old to music, whatever. It's like you can explain tension and release and like resolution. Not always the easiest thing to capture in music. And we know that with EDM as like a wide genre, that the genre is almost exclusively based around top line melodic identification. Like top line melody is like the thing you might whistle or hum or whatever, right? It's like top line melody could be very important, and then tension and release, the drop, like creating these artificial moments of tension release. Like that's like very, very prominent in certain styles of like 20,000 person, 30,000 person, like festival type shit.
Have you seen that Key and Peele episode where they're doing a reenactment of being an EDM DJ? It's really funny. Yeah. It's like, because like they have this button, right, to drop the beat, but they won't press it, and everyone's like just really, really tense.
Tension and release.
The release never comes.
Yeah, I mean,
people are just sweating balls.
That makes a lot of sense, because that is the thing. And like I've been to a lot of events where I'll go to an event because I want to hear a certain DJ or performer or whatever, and maybe that's not their style, right? But like the other people that kind of surround them or support them or whatever that are playing, like that's how they get the crowd to get interacting, is like doing these drops and different things, these build-ups, these tension release. And like every time I watch the people just, but here's the thing is like, there's nothing wrong with that. That works. And it makes sense because it has a feeling. And like, trust me, the right kind of tension release in a song is the real beauty and the payoff in almost every song. But there's also other ways to get different emotions, you know, and as a DJ performer, there's other ways to get emotions. You can do that, and you should learn how to do that too. But there's other ways to get emotions, other times, you know, like for instance, playing 10, 15, 20 minutes of a certain feeling of music, mixing some songs, whatever, and you never have this tension release, but you create this thing, and then all of a sudden you create this dynamic change that it's not tension release in the whole push a button, you know, the drop analogy, but rather you've created a dynamic that takes somebody somewhere else, and it may not get it may not get that kind of emotional reaction, but it has a different type of emotional attachment where they're now along for a different part of the ride. Like they didn't get off at the stop, you know, they stayed on the train, you know, so to speak. There's different ways to tackle that. It's like going to see a pop star in the concert, and they're going to do their hits and their radio stuff. And then there's probably going to be a moment in the show where they're just sitting at a piano and doing a ballad.
So without having the experience of playing for a huge mega crowd, how do you vet the tracks that you make? Is it based on how you feel, or do you kind of test it out with the separate room and seeing dancers come and vibe to it? Like,
yeah, it's when it comes to like Coflo stuff, right? Because I feel like I'm getting to the point where I'm definitely way more than like what people know my music for. Like as like a producer and a guy who makes music, like I can do more now, and I'm getting better at doing more. And I'm realizing the value of like, I used to be like, well, if I'm doing more, Coflo is doing all this stuff. I'm realizing the value that like, it's important that if I'm building a fan base around the styles of dance music, the styles of house music particularly that I do, that I continue to do that as Coflo. And if I'm doing something else, it's not Coflo. And I used to be stubborn about that. And I'm realizing the value of that because now I have fans. And it's really fucking cool that I have real fucking fans. Like people that are really following my shit that I don't know. I don't know them through dance. I don't know them because I grew up in the same neighborhood or same city. Like they're from somewhere else. They're maybe even quite a bit younger than me. Maybe they're quite a bit older than me. Like they're just not, there's no reason other than they like my music, right? They're a real fan and they want to support me and all these things. Like I'm realizing I'm doing a disservice if I try to do these other things that are just as equally artistically what I feel cool or whatever, if I try to mix that in with the stuff that they're trying to follow and support. Like maybe they'll be so into me that they'll also want to support this other thing. That's great. But I don't want to force that upon them. It's not fair because I've decided to create this thing that I want them to, and it's not like I'm trying to satisfy them. It's just more of like I'm realizing the value in doing this thing. Because if I was trying to satisfy people, I wouldn't make a 12-minute jazz inspired infused house record and then also make a 3-minute like atonal banger with like some crazy synth. You know what I mean? Like I'll go from side to side when it comes to me making house records, right? But it's like, you know, and some people are going to like more of when I do this versus that, and that's fine. But like if I'm making like, I don't know, like a fucking rap record or something, you know, probably they don't want that popping up.
Yeah, you know, what I'm hearing is it kind of reminds me of the tension and release analogy, or in this case, expectation and delivery.
Yeah,
right,
totally.
And also going back to the food analogy, where if you go to a certain restaurant and you have like favorites or the style of food, for example, if I go to a Vietnamese store or a restaurant, I'm not going to be ordering a burger, and I hope they don't serve me a burger.
And if they have a burger and you order it, it's not the greatest thing. It's like, what did you expect? You know. Well, sorry, your original question. I digressed a bit, but your original question was what now? I'm sorry.
How do you vet out your tracks? You know.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So the other part to that is, you know, if it's not on brand, right, Coflo or whatever, it's can I dance to it? Yeah, like it's a really important thing. Like I can't make a song and go back and listen to it and go, yeah, but I know people will like it, because that happens where I listen back to it. I'm like, yeah, but this is going to work. Like this is going to work because other music has feelings like this and it works well. It's popular. People will like this, but then it doesn't make me want to dance. No, I'm not gonna continue with that. Something needs to change.
So I guess in that context, how you say, or how you vet tracks is, one, does it first move you before anything else?
Yeah. Can I dance to it? Yeah. It's something that, I mean, I could ignore, but it doesn't feel authentic. Because I've made stuff where I'm like, God, this would probably be pretty popular, but I would never fucking dance to it, which means I would never play it if I was performing. I'm like, no. You know, it's like, and then it's like, would I release it then under an alias then that's like not associated with me? Like I remove it from who I am, then it's like, oh, that's fucking a bit contrived. Like if I make something and let's say it's an alias or something, I still want to be into it. Maybe I'm not making it to dance, but I still want to be into what it is, you know? But like if I'm making dance music, like it's like I have to. I can't do something that doesn't make me want to dance. I cannot. And you know, over time, I'm sure I'll listen back to songs and maybe not find the danceability as much as I did, you know, and like stuff that I'm working on currently. But yeah, no, I have to. And then yeah, you know, I will test stuff. I test stuff, you know, against songs that I feel make me want to dance, and how does it feel? And maybe I care about how the floor reacts to it, but to be honest, again, I don't have a residency anywhere. I'm just now starting to do my own party sparingly here in the Bay Area. I don't work enough as a performer to really have a great sense of how things work. One of the main reasons why I continue to do Simmer Room, like my stream on Wednesdays, is that so one, I continue to get better as a performer. I dedicate time to that because I don't want to not be good at it, because when an opportunity comes, I want to be able to like absolutely put my fucking best foot forward, but then also I get to test my music up against other music that I like and see how it makes me feel. I can, kind of gauge like, the chat room can interact with stuff and tell me if they like stuff. And that's always awesome, super awesome. But we're not there dancing. We're not occupying a space and sharing energy. It's a very different thing. I don't not think that the whole Twitch virtual thing is cool. I think it's great, but it is not the culture that I come from. It's not the culture that I hope to live, to service in the future. I mean, don't get me wrong. No. I want to be able to service the virtual audience and fans that I have that are wanting to connect with me. What I mean is like, I don't want to not have the opportunity to like service the actual club culture that I grew up in. Like I want to be able to perform. I'm not like hyped on being a DJ, but like I want to be able to perform. I want to be able to hear my music played in the way that I know I can play it the best for people to have the experience that they're going to have the way that I did growing up, So like very, very proud of like being a part of a legacy of like this American branch of music, and I want to see that through as I get older. So, as I have more opportunity to be able to perform for people, I'll continue to learn what works and what doesn't and see how, and trust me, every single time I play, and I mean, you've heard me play a number of times, like almost, if not half or more of my set is my music. It's a very important thing for me to make sure I play a fuck ton of my music, stuff that no one's heard yet or is coming out, so I can feel it working or not working, or I have an idea how I can present it. That's like probably the funnest part of like DJing. Isn't DJing and like being the center of attention. It's about like presenting the song that I made in the way that I think could work the best. It's like it's such a cool thrill. It's the closest thing I can think of to like probably how a musician performs a song that they wrote.
Let's jump over to some of your the songs you made, as far as like how you went about it, the reasons why, and so forth.
Sure. Yeah. Cool. So we're looking at a project. So what this is we're looking at a digital audio workstation, a DAW, a DAW, and this particular software is called Logic Pro. It's the one that Apple makes. And what you see is a bunch of different tracks of sounds and things. So like the colors and these little clips of things are essentially different types of sounds. And this particular song is a song that is about 10 minutes and 30 seconds or so. So it's a very long song. And the reason why it's so long is that the record label Catalea Music, it's a new record label out of Sweden, I believe. They wanted me to do the B-side record to a Vick Lavender song that Vick Lavender did. Vick Lavender did a cover instrumental of SOS Band's No One's Gonna Love You. And so they actually hired me specifically for the backside of the record. And knowing that I was going to be the artist that was doing the whole backside of the record, that allows me to compose something to be able to use as much time as available on that record. So I asked, it's like if somebody asks you to compose something and it's going on a physical medium, there's rules. It's like, you're going to be one of like 3 or 4 people doing something. So give us something that's like 5 minutes long, 3 minutes long, whatever. Well, I have the whole side, and I think you can do like almost 20 something minutes on a 12-inch record at 33 RPM. So why wouldn't I do something compositionally that's like quite, expansive? Like I have the room, I have the flexibility, I have the longing, because the opportunities don't come up that often to where I was like purposely get to do something longer. So this particular song, it's a remix. So that means that I was allowed to do whatever I wanted, using whatever parts from the original song I wanted to use in any kind of way I wanted to use. There were no rules to what I had to do. So I'll kind of give you like the general overview, and then we can listen to some sections in part, because I don't know if we want to like listen to the whole song. So we'll just listen to the sections. But what I did is I took the main thematic piece melodically, which was coming from a guitar track. So you can see I have 99 channels. So I have them, you don't see them all at the same time, but so I had this guitar part. Sounds like this. Right. So it's this melody of the song, and there's lots of other little things to like the theme of the song, but like in the original version, and I used some other stuff from the original version as well, but that was like the theme that I was like, because I'm remixing instrumental. There's no vocal, right? So it's like you have to pick something identifiable if it's going to be a remix, but I get to do whatever I want. So I've thought I'll build my theme around that guitar. So I ended up doing a bunch of different stuff in terms of like how I kind of edited it a bit, but keeping the same melody and doing some effects and different stuff. But how it started for me was I took that guitar theme and I tried to build a groove around it that felt like I kind of imagined this spacious idea of like something that was introducing me into what could ultimately be, if we were to look at it like over the course of like hours rather than 10 minutes, something that would like introduce me into like the beginning of the night. And then I have like a section that really like kind of gives me more of like a main section of the night, and then kind of takes me and whisks me away into something different where I transition completely in my story, right? And I don't do that very often because, again, I don't really have the length of time to be able to do that. Like if you give someone a record and it's like sounds like 3 different songs and you expect them to play it at a party, it's kind of weird. It's like these are 3 songs, not 1 song, you know? So I thought I'm going to take this this guitar idea, and how do I create a groove around that? So using some bass and a bunch of percussion, and some Foley and fills, like sounds and feelings, I kind of ended up with a feeling that felt like this. Right. So that's the principle of the groove. So it's like, it's moving. It's got a dance sensibility. You can tell its sense of speed, right? Because of the shakers and different things that are going on in the percussion, but it has a sense of space. Now, to harmonize that, I ended up playing kind of my own like piano parts and different stuff. And what you end up with, let me check my project settings real quick.
Can you elaborate what you mean by to harmonize that?
Yeah. Turn this on. So this guitar part is a melody. I wanted harmonize, so I wanted other notes to be able to support what was being played. So I needed to have the most simplistic way to put it is I needed like some kind of chord progression or something to kind of like support that melody, right? I needed the harmony. I needed the things to come in to hold it together, so to speak, right? It's like I showed you this groove, which was like my bass and my percussion and stuff, but I needed something else to kind of fill that out. So I ended up with, in a different sections you have, and we don't need to listen to all of them, but we can kind of get a sense for like how it begins with like this, these pads and different things, which then ends up going into some Rhodes and piano type stuff that I played to harmonize against that guitar. So if we listen to it kind of as it introduces the idea, you'll hear what I mean by how I led into that. establishing a sense of movement here. Now here's my harmony, right? And then we're going to introduce the theme, the melodic idea with that guitar.
And that's you on the keys right there?
Yes, yeah. So everything with the exception of that guitar and there's these piano, like this piano synth part that's from the original, but everything else is all hand done. I made, played. All this shit down here, that's all like these little bloopity bloops, like these, when it looks like all these. This is me, like, I'll take when I want to make it feel like I have like a drum kit or a band, I'll take all this percussion and different shit out and I'll put it all around my studio and I'll turn on the microphone or a couple of microphones sometimes and I'll play back the track like this after I have like a rough idea of like, I'm going to maybe have this come in like this and slow. And I'll just walk around with drumsticks in my hands and stuff and I'll just be like ding, 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 like tapping on stuff and like kind of making texture and things like. And I imagine it's like if you've ever seen like a jazz band player or a band play and like they have these sections of like introducing ideas, you'll see the percussionists and different people like, because they're not like playing stuff maybe, they're just like waiting and then it's like something happens and somebody be like with the chimes like, and they're like, you know, like I think about like real humans doing stuff when I'm making music like this and it's like, but I'm one person. So how do I accomplish that? So you'll see me, you know, I'll do stuff like this and then I'll end up with all these little pieces of audio that I cut up and.
Are there any certain layers in this file or project that has the harmonic entropy that you're talking about?
Oh, I mean, so much of it. Well, actually, yeah, actually, the part that's about to come up has a bit of that. So, the song, so the original song is SOS Band, really cool song, down-tempo song, kind of like old R&B, like 80s, 90s style R&B kind of tune. And it has lyrics and it follows that melody of that guitar and has some other ideas. Well, I thought it would be cool because Vick's version doesn't have a singer. I thought it would be cool to like do my own interpretation of the lyrics, but I do my own kind of harmonic additive thing. It's like, I don't follow the melody. I kind of do my own thing and I don't do the exact same lyrics, but it's like the same, ideally the same message, kind of, sort of, right? So I actually used a guitar pedal type of thing that would reharmonize my voice. I did two vocal parts. One of them's reharmonizing my voice. The other one's just me singing. But I use it to reharmonize my voice. And as a part of like the reharmonization was in part about giving my voice for those sections, not only harmony, but also harmonic entropy, like giving it texture to introduce, like, so it would give a sense, like a feeling. It's not only like the notes that get used, but it's like texturally, how does it add to the song? Because like right now, I don't know about you, but I was feeling like I was making this sense of whimsicalness. I'm having movement. If you listen, there's all these like parts and like little bells and tinkles and like I was creating a sense of like atmosphere. So how do I introduce this vocal idea that I have? How do I also make it feel like it lives in this atmospheric space? And I was like, harmony works, but if it's like really clean and sterile, I don't personally have a great voice for like, at least I haven't been able to develop it yet, to be able to create like atmosphere with my voice.
Yeah, when I hear atmosphere, I think of halation in photography.
Totally.
Yeah, where it kind of softens the light and adds maybe a certain blur or certain like moodiness to it.
Yeah. So one of the tricks that I use besides of the harmonic kind of like texturization that I'm running with the guitar pedal, I also use something called a shimmer, which is essentially a style of reverb, right? It creates a sense of echo, like short echoes. That's what reverb is like really, 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 really short echoes being repeated over time. But it also introduces another harmonic overtone at a certain frequency could be an octave, it could be any interval, but it introduces an overtone, which is essentially floating around inside of these echoes. So it's almost like I'm adding another harmony by virtue of interval. So it's like it's more harmonic entropy. It's more lack of order to then sum together for a feeling. So you'll hear that as I come in here and I introduce, against the theme, I'm introducing more texture and more, and it's not only that, but it's also what I play, because I'm playing the keys live against the part, right? So like I choose to add in these senses of feeling, and that's how you get like a live feeling. But here, listen to this.
Yeah, I hear the moodiness that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a particular part of the night.
Yeah, and I kind of repeat this theme, right? Where I introduce you to the melody twice, right? And that ends up giving way. This whole section is like what I would consider like the introduction of the song, right? And this, you get a sense of the theme, and you get a sense of like my moodiness and like this ethereal quality with lots of different shimmers and little, sometimes people call them like ear candy. It's like little things of like melodic drifts that aren't, it's like, they're not thematic, right? Like the guitar is like, dun, 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 right? It's a theme that you get a little earworm, and you could start to recognize it in the song, and you would maybe walk away singing that. But like these other ear candies, these harmonic ideas, if they were repeated, you might walk away with them also singing them, but I don't repeat them. They just kind of get sprinkled in because they're meant to, in a lot of ways, build either tension or release to kind of like foreshadow that change could come, theoretically. And,
in cinema, I'm visualizing what John Woo does a lot in his films, where as soon as there's a certain scene, there would be doves flying in the background or something like that.
Oh yeah. I'm not hella familiar.
But you know the doves in the Asian films,
exactly.
Yes. Like they're not part of the storyline, but they kind of serve it to kind of paint
totally, exactly. So if we listen to this section is how we go from thematic, which is the song, No One's Gonna Love You, into us giving way into reintroducing the theme again, but now we're in a very obvious dance kind of feeling. Like it feels like we have a dance now, even though the tempo is exactly the same. And we also start to introduce new characters that not only are within the theme, like the theme is there, but it's also the jazz, like the improvisation, like lead elements and different stuff like that. So that's this section into this next section here.
Yeah, now that you pointed out, I really hear the sparkles, like shimmer.
See, and already we feel like we're changing, right?
Yeah.
It's not only the drums, but like the notes that get played, the new harmony. So right now we're still building tension. I mean, it's like a new idea, but watch how it feels like it pays off. into the theme. But now the theme has a different feeling, right? It's like the same theme, but we keep that theme going. The music, the instrumentation doesn't repeat. It continues to stay very live, but we're really beating that theme of like the guitar, the lyrics, right? Like we keep being very thematic, and then we end up creating another sense of payoff one more time, and then we go to a long section, and in this section, we now depart from our original theme that we just heard in the first two sections, and we still live in the same world, but we change the theme enough because we have the opportunity to do so, because we have the length of time, right? Like this could easily come to the end of the song, right? But instead, like we have the opportunity to now give you what you could consider a whole new part of music while maintaining the subject of the song, but changing like the actual harmonic and melodic theme. And we do that. We introduce that idea with the tension and release. Like we create something to go somewhere, and then the payoff occurs. And so that sounds. We'll listen to that going into that, and then you'll hear what that sounds like. Big way that we're changing this sense as we change the groove, and the drums are very similar, if not the same, but we just changed the bass. The bass now has a new melody, and it changes the whole feeling of now we're going somewhere else. So like you can actually hear it. Here's the original bass melody and theme. Let me do it against the drums so it makes a bit more sense to people who aren't used to listening to just melody. Which the bass is following the harmonic suggestion of the chords that I was playing.
Yeah, very informative.
Boom, boom. Dum, 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 dum. A lot of space in it. Like a lot of pause, space, which people would consider the funk, right? The right amount of space is like the funk. And then we move to this idea, which is the other bass or the other pattern. Way more often, way less space.
Yeah. Yeah, this one feels like it's building upward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has different like melodic
direction.
Yeah, direction. Right, and then and that gives way to this. Different timbre. Before I was using a Rhodes. So before I was introducing a similar rhythmic pattern, slightly different harmonic idea, but different rhythmic pattern with like very similar rhythm pattern, different harmonic idea, but I was using a different timbre. So I was using, they're both, you know, kind of like time-based pianos, but I was using this one. All right. Versus this one. And different, obviously, a different chord set, but like very similar rhythmic feeling, right? Change the timbre, change the feeling of where the harmonic direction is going. And then we're gonna get back to a theme with the guitar, but we're not gonna like beat down on the same theme. It's gonna be more of a solo, but you'll recognize the theme. It'll seem familiar. And then the vocal theme will also come back, but it'll be different. It'll feel similar, but it's different.
Yeah, I feel like the intelligibility of this part of the vocals is clearer than earlier.
And the vocals aren't meant to be the thing in front.
Yeah, it depends what kind of, yeah.
To me, it was like that guitar I wanted to be in front. But they're all together. It's like I wanted everything to be listened together for this song. Yeah, and as it progresses, essentially like, because we're in this is the last section, and as it progresses, I end up doing like another section where it just starts to feel like it gets more grand and builds up energetically with some soloing and stuff, and then it dumps you out at the end, and you're kind of like it's like you're done. It's like it's like you finished the workout kind of thing.
Yeah, like you exit the ride, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it kind of sounds like this. We won't play the whole thing, but it kind of sounds like this. Back a little bit, sorry. Like your last few turns, and you're really getting to the end of the ride. It's like still quite a bit harmonically going on. There's a lot of shit being played. Last little theme of the vocals. Yeah, so it's like, in order to like be able to accomplish all those ideas, you need 10 minutes, or, to like really make a statement. I mean, I could obviously shrink all those down into a few bars. So it's like you have intro, first theme, and then you have second theme, and then outro. Yeah, you could, of course I could truncate it, but it's like, then I don't have any room for any of the musicality of like really establishing the theme again, and feeling like you're still there, or, if you're making a dance track, when the tempo is that fast, which this isn't a hella fast track, but 120, the tempo is that fast, you need more length to be able to build an attachment to it, right? If it's a slower song, 3 minutes feels longer than a faster song.
Yeah, I see. Do you have other projects on here, like your other Further Love songs, such as either Ritual Reunion-ish or That Thing?
I don't have. Let's see.
Yeah, I want to discuss one more song.
I definitely don't have Ritual. Don't have Ritual. Like those songs are, they're in archives.
Okay,
for sure. Yeah, I mean, I have them, but I don't have them on here. Yeah. What do I have? Is there anything worth showing in here? This I could show this really quick because this is far less complicated. I think this is interesting just because this is also another remix, but completely different approach and way more of a, it's like the idea is like make it dancey, like get a really good groove, a really good bounce, let that motherfucker go and just have the song just be the song. It's way different. There's no fucking sparkles and you know what I mean? Like it's like a whole different thing. It's like yeah. Get a really good bounce, have enough stuff in there that it's not boring. And then also the remix, so this is a remix of a singer called Simone Green from Chicago. And what was interesting is I did 2 versions of this. This is the more simple version. The other version I did is a little bit more complicated and it stays true to her song. So like, this is what her vocal sounds like, not the song, but the vocal. So like,
don't say nothing, just
this is the hook. So it goes, don't say
nothing, just.
I'm missing a part. I don't know where the part is. Sorry. It goes,
don't
just go on.
Don't say nothing,
just go on. I don't know where that part is. This is
don't
like,
say nothing.
And then you have a verse.
Y'all keep on talking, same noise on a different day.
So this is your like lead melody.
When you acting that way.
She can fucking sing her ass off. So that hook's a little bit different. Like I said, I'm missing a part in here, but you know, it's like the project's not necessarily organized for like an audience, right? So it's like, what I did was 2 things, outside of creating a different bounce to the track, was make it so her vocal now is not her. It's not Simone. It's Simone Green's performance, but it's not Simone Green's vocal box anymore. I changed the format of her voice. So I made her voice into the shape that would be closer to a man's vocal format. I thought it would be fun. But it's still her performance dead ass, right? And then instead of her hook, I just chopped up the most simplistic thing because I wanted it to be more simple. So it's just feels more repetitive more quickly as to not detract from the bounce, because I really wanted just the bounce of the instrumental to be like everything. Like the bounce, the bass, and the sonic timbre from the bass, and that's everything. So you'll see it sounds way crazier and very repetitive.
Yeah, the song is way different than the last one.
Oh, yeah. Way different intention.
Like, we're definitely on a dance floor and not like in Fantasyland.
Yeah. Like, it's all about the texture versus the bounce of the bass. And then watch, when you hear the vocal, the verse melody is still, but you'll see what I mean by changing her format.
Yeah, the voice sounds almost androgynous.
Uh-huh. And so now we're gonna do the payoff, like the release into the hook, and the hook's chopped up. So we're anticipation, and now we'll have full payoff right here. So we never take away the bounce, right?
Yeah.
The bounce is always like. Right, and then rinse and repeat. We literally do that for another verse, another hook. That's the song.
Yeah, this song gives me the vibe that like it would be a good usage to kind of bring the party back together, kind of recalibrate. Like everyone's like, kind of maybe they're off somewhere, but let's bring everyone back.
Yeah. I mean, this is like, again, I wanted a good bounce. I wanted to be able to be very danceable. And then on a system, like, when I was making this, it was like leave enough room to where on a system that this bass is going to sound really crazy. That was like a really big part of the idea. It's like, how do I get this bass to sound really crazy? The bass needed to be as important as the vocal for this. Like that was like, it's just like what gave Lou, this is what gave way to like the idea. The other version that I did of this song is very different. It's still a very bouncy, dance heavy record. Still has like an energy, but it's not a bounce like it's way. It has a very danceable energy, but it's not like this. And the vocal is the original vocal arrangement idea presentation. I didn't fucking chop it up and do the format change and that stuff. So
yeah, this particular song gave me feelings of what I would describe as like a head bopper.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But and here's the thing is like this is a song that does not. It's a head bopper, but it's only a head bopper if you're like listening to it like on your Bluetooth speakers or whatever. Like if you hear it at the club, it has a different impact because of the range of the low end.
Okay.
There's a heavy focus on the range of the low end where you would be like, oh, it's like it'll go from your head to your back. You'll be like, oh God. Like it definitely has, and like that's a huge part of like the idea. It's like rather than be musical, because I could have like done something really musical, but the original version of this song, that they're hiring me to remix away from. Well, they didn't say I had to do anything particularly, but like you already had a really musical version of it. Why was I just going to do my version of a musical version of it? Like I wanted to do something different, and I did something different. And then after I did that, I was like, this is different. And I thought it was dope. And then I was like, how dope would it be if I did something that was like way more simple and she sounded like a new person? Because technology lets me do that. So
yeah, I definitely like what came out. It definitely brought me to the mood.
Thanks. Yeah, I like it. It's dope. I haven't had a chance to play it on a big system yet. But I've tested it at least on my PA system a bunch, and it definitely it's got a great. The low end has a great bounce to it for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure.
So I know earlier last year, I believe you went to Amsterdam, right?
Yes.
For Summer Dance Forever or House Dance Forever?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm curious about your experience over there, both as a judge, contestant, and also as like a DJ and producer being at these events,
Yeah. So it was my first time being at that event. I've actually wanted to go a few times. The year that I had actually had it on my calendar and had been making arrangements and stuff, we had a family, kind of like a family sickness that happened, and that really changed quite a bit for me that year. And I never had after that. It had only been a few years, but I hadn't made the effort to go. And then this opportunity came up where they wanted to have me as a judge, teacher, and be a part of the event. And first off, I haven't been to Europe to dance like that since literally a couple of weekends before the pandemic. And when I had went in 2020, right before the pandemic, I was there representing USA as the Just Debout national champions with my partner Tony Ray, and we were competing in the final Just Debout category in Paris. And in that environment, it's like you kind of are supposed to have for that tournament the best of the best at the time. Are they really the best of the best? No, of course not. But it's some of the best in the world that are putting that foot forward all at the same time. So being in that environment, I'm seeing a lot of people that are way more experienced, people that I've known for maybe 20 years, you know, like seeing all these people from all over the world that it just holds like a different level of like understanding and experience coming from time before YouTube. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's just like, there's young people, but it's just like, I'm kind of around a certain experience and pedigree, right? When I went to summer dance, the overwhelming energy I was surrounded by were like far less experienced and super young people. And it was wild. Like it was such a cool vibe. So interesting because apparently this is like, it's like a common thing in Europe, right? Or maybe other countries as well, but like America, it's not dense like that. Like to be at an event like that, where it's like that kind of energy, you know what I mean? For that style or culture of dance, like it was wild, you know, and I'm not a professional dancer. You know, I have a lot of experience traveling and dancing and stuff. So it's like, it's not like I'm unaware of dance in the world, but I haven't been around events. I haven't been around stuff to that degree probably for like 10 years. And I was quite a bit younger and less experienced 10 years ago, you know? So it was surreal in that way, being surrounded by that kind of energy. And then the other thing is it's my first time traveling and kind of now being not departed from being known as a dancer, but like the relationships I've built with people internationally have been mostly through dance, right? So, but now I have a lot more relationships that I built in music as well. So it was my first time being in a position where people were coming up to me and being like, I mean, it happened over and over again. It's not like it happened once. It was like, at first I was like, oh, that was cool. And then it was like, whoa, this is strange. People were like, yo, do you know there's a guy named Coflo that makes music, house music?
They were telling you that?
Yes. Like almost like you should get together with him and do a project. You know what I mean? Like it was like the first time someone said that was like, yo, do you know there's a guy that makes house music called Coflo? Like spells it exactly the same. And I was like, yeah, that's me. They're like, really? They're like, it wasn't surprising, but it was more like, almost like they almost thought it would be, but like probably not, you know? And I was like, yeah. Or like, you know, I had people go, I had some people from Italy, actually. It was pretty cool. Cause a lot of people were like and there's also like this thing where like, I'm a judge and I'm obviously a little bit older, and the company I keep, like my friends over there that were there are also older, and they're like legends in Europe, you know? So like people look at them, at least this is my take. I don't know. I can't speak for people, but like how I see them kind of interacting is like, you know, a good friend of mine is like a fucking pioneer, you know, in a certain country or whatever. And it's like, they have thousands of students, you know what I mean? And it's like, we're friends and we're just kicking it. And these people are like, you know, they just want to interact with these people, you know? So, you know, I don't really have that here in America. Like I've grown up, all the scenes that I've ever been in and grown up in, it's like, we're all just like, yo, what up? You know, it's like, people aren't looking at me like that, you know? So it's weird that I'm friends with, you know, these people that these people look at like that. And I mean, obviously I have American friends too.
It's kind of like having a dance celebrity over there, right?
Yeah, I'm not the dance celebrity, but I'm keeping the company of the dance celebrities, right? So like I'm in that, I'm caught up in that energy, and I had these people from Italy be like, yeah, I love your music, I know your music, and I know you dance, but I guess I just didn't realize you were that level of dancer. And that was like the fucking coolest compliment, because to me it's like, I know I'm not the greatest dancer in the world. I think I'm pretty good, considering I've put in, you know, fucking 26, 27 years of study into it, you know, and I haven't stopped. You know, the last few years, post-pandemic, I haven't trained as much like in specific study, but I'm still like, you know, training and studying and stuff, just not, I've been doing probably a little bit more capoeira training than I am dance training. Yeah, it was such a cool compliment, because I was like, oh fuck, like they think I'm good. You know what I mean? Like good enough to where it's like, oh, this guy's actually like, it's not just like DJ producer that makes dance music can also like dance or like used to dance in the club. But like this motherfucker really gets down. Like he could compete or he could perform. Like there's like a different pedigree. It's like, I got a lot of homies that are good DJs or, you know, they make music a little bit too. And yeah, they get down. And just, I have complete respect for the fact that they'll still like throw down on the dance floor. But like, I can also see that they're not the same level as maybe one of my friends who's like a professional dancer in Europe or in LA or whatever. It's like, there's an obvious difference. Just like I have friends that are dancers that also they're really good dancers that also make music. No shade. They're just not at the level. Or shit, they even DJ. A lot of friends now that dance that also DJ. Again, no shade. If you're a dancer and you're listening to this, you should absolutely learn how to make music and DJ. Don't let people fucking shit on you for wanting to do it. Just don't get caught up in needing to play parties and like be some fucking super mega thing. Do it because it's fun and you enjoy it and you get something out of it. And if you want to take it somewhere, you should. It'll make your dance better. But like, I got homies that they're not that great, you know? Yeah, they have some good taste in music generally and whatever, but like, you know, you look at that and you see the difference between the ill-ass people and people that just, you know, can do it. And it just felt really cool to be acknowledged. Like, obviously they think I'm good at music, and then they were surprised that I also dance that well. So that was really cool. And I had a lot of interactions with people that were like, had no idea I made music. And then within like 2 days coming up to me being like, I went and started listening to your music, you know, once I found out who you were, like, wow, you're incredible. So it was very good for my ego to be out there. You know, I had great classes, made some new friends that I've been able to interact with, including, I just can't remember, I feel so bad. I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now. But a student from Taiwan that I had met out there. And then she was visiting the US and she came and danced at the sim room at my house. And, I mean, just super cool. That experience was amazing.
Yeah. You know, I haven't had the experience of someone telling me, hey, do you know, there's this guy from San Diego named Vin that dances too while being in the Bay Area, right? Yeah. But I have had the experience, even when I was in Mexico at Mikasa, on one of the rooftop parties. It was super dark and I was ordering a drink at the bar. And then this dude goes, hey, you look very familiar. I'm like, okay, so that could mean anything, right? So
yeah, of course.
I was like, I used to be from San Diego, now I live in the Bay Area. You might know me from dance. He's like, do you have a podcast?
Hey,
yeah. So nowadays, especially people in the Bay Area, they actually know me as the podcast guy.
Yeah. It's dope. Yeah. I mean, it shows when your art, like the passion is paying off in your art and like it's being recognized as its thing. Because I mean, the majority of me making music, the vast majority of me making music is nobody taking it serious. I have yet to like be making music where people take it serious longer than they haven't been taking it serious, for sure. Yeah, I've been making music a long time and people definitely never took me serious.
Yeah, so it sounds super funny to have someone, hey, do you know this other guy named Coflo that makes music? Like,
yeah, that was funny. I was like, yeah, that's me. They're like, no fucking way.
What was their reaction when you told them that's actually me?
I mean, they were just like, what? You know, it wasn't like some like, no, you know, it was just, that wasn't the first time that happened. But it was the first time it happened in abundance, where it happened multiple times every single day I was there. The first time that ever happened to me was maybe like 2018 or 19 in Texas at Blueprint. My friend Bambino, who wasn't my friend at the time, we were just meeting. We got done dancing. We were at Blueprint Festival in Houston, and we were at Cat's Deli. It's like an all-night kind of like deli spot, and we were, you know, I was sitting at a table with some people I knew and then a bunch of people I didn't, trying to like make friends, you know, where everybody's like, all these people are there from this event. And, you know, we're talking and the guy's like, Bambino is like, man, he's like, you look like you do capoeira, da, da, da. So we started talking about capoeira and he's a capoeirista and all this stuff. He goes, man, you got to check out this album. It's the only album I've ever heard that kind of does like this house music thing, but it's like rooted in real capoeira music. And it's by this guy Coflo. And I was like, that's me. That's my album. It's the only album I have. He was like, it like took him a second to realize like, oh shit. And so that was the first and only time that it ever happen to me until I went to summer dance many years later. You know, and I still would dude, in the parties at summer dance, I'm like, I would love to fucking play one of their parties one day. That would be so fucking sick.
Yeah, you know, now I'm curious about like maybe this is the path to reaching stardom, right? Because I wonder how many people have accidentally bumped into Black Coffee and be like, hey, oh yeah, do you know about this guy named Black Coffee, but not know that they're talking to him,
Yeah,
right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I definitely don't. The only sign I take from it is that people take my art seriously.
Yeah,
and that's a good.
It's super cool, man.
Yeah. I don't know if it necessarily means that I have a fruitful career ahead of me, but
because for me, at least that indicates your work is like outpacing your network or your visibility.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
Which is a great
totally.
thing.
Yeah, totally. Which is nice because the amount of time that I spend trying to get better at the thing, it doesn't leave a lot of time for me to be like physically visible. Like I have to pick and choose. I can either network or I can get really good at making music.
I think it's actually even extra cooler because in some ways it's like getting a third party anonymous feedback, right? Because someone's excited about your music and telling it to you as a form of recommendation, right? Versus like knowing that this is your music and then just forming that connection first.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong when I say this. It's super dope. Exactly the way you're putting it. But the validation is people playing my records and seeing people dance to it and Shazamming it, or regardless, even if they give a fuck if it's me or not, like seeing the interaction that somebody thinks this record's dope enough that they wanted to play it for this fucking venue of people, and all these people have this interaction with it, and that to me is just like the most amazing thing for like the dance music, the house music that I make. Like that's the most amazing thing, and that's the biggest sense of like, you know, that's about as real as it gets. People aren't playing my record because they know me. They're playing because they like the music.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of motherfuckers that are playing homies records because they're trying to put homies on. Nothing wrong with that, but like doesn't hit the same way as like someone who has no fucking clue who I am, you know, that plays my record.
So what did you think of the music that was being played over in Amsterdam or in these battles?
Oh, so you know, in the battles, it was good generally. There was a lot of good music, and there was a lot of songs that I didn't like as well. There was nothing that was like grotesque to me. Like, God, it's just like a matter of taste. There's stuff that I would like more than other stuff. I will say that in general, the tempo felt way too fast overall for me. But man,
what BPM would you say was that?
There were a lot of times it would be north of 125. Or shit, even if it's at 125 is fucking fast. For someone to be really expressive besides just big, 125 is fucking fast, dude. With house music that has quarter note kick drums, it's fucking hella fast, dude. You got to think about like stylistically what you expect them to do. And if their style doesn't lend to really short, you know, syncopated type of movements, what if their style is way more through beat, thematic, creating lines, turns, stuff like that? Like a fast song like that isn't going to probably wear with lots of shit, lots of syncopation or polyrhythm going on with quarter notes. Like that's not going to lend well, I don't think, to the way that they dance. And that's the game. Some people stylistically aren't going to look as good in those settings because of the music choice or how they identify with it or the way that they paint that picture, you know. And there were definitely, you know, there was a lot of dope music during the 6 or 7 hours that we had to do the prelim selection that vibe didn't make its way into the actual head-to-heads. And I mean, who knows why or what reason. I will say that the DJs that they had were great. And Leroy Ray or E-Ray maybe? Fucking A. God damn it. His music. when he was also playing one of the after parties, he had like kind of this new jazz. It was all this like jazz derived, but like all kinds of different stuff. And like, fuck, man, incredible. I wish I hadn't have been so fucking jet lagged. I wasn't feeling good until the last morning that I was there. I really struggled. That was a lesson for me where it was like, if I was just going there to like rock one party and then I had to like go on to the next, like if I was performing like that, it would have been fine. But me to be there to like be physical and judge and teach and all that stuff, like I was wrecked. I should have been there a few days before. I just didn't have it in my schedule.
Yeah, that's a good point. So let's talk about some of the dancing that happened at the event, right? So since you were a judge, what were some things that you were judging on, or like, what's your kind of metric? Do you have a rule book or criteria that you look for?
Yeah, how good they dance to the music.
Is that the main thing, or are there other things involved?
No, that's it.
Okay, cool. Would you be open to making some commentary over some videos?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we can start with one of your judge battles.
Okay.
And then we can.
I only had one.
Okay, yeah. So
I lost.
let's at least I'm curious about what, because we see these battles, right? But one is we don't really know what the judges are judging on, and also I think it's also interesting to figure out like what were the contestants or the dancers feeling in that moment, or what was going through their mind.
Oh yeah, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So maybe for that battle, we can talk about like what was going through your mind, what were you feeling, and,
Okay.
Yeah, like kind of a thought bubble thing.
Yeah, sure.
And then for the other battles that you were actually judging, then you can say, oh yeah, this is what you're looking for. This is why
okay.
I voted a certain way.
Yeah, sure.
To our listeners out there, we just did a commentary on some dance clips. This is most likely going to be created into separate smaller clips in itself and not mini podcasts. So make sure you check that out. To Coflo, final closing thoughts for our listeners out there. What would you like to close out with?
Yeah, final closing thoughts. If you're someone who's into dance music, and you're a dancer, find a way to create music. It doesn't have to be professionally. It doesn't even have to be like a super passionate hobby. Just find a way to like be more creative in the fact that you as a dancer will learn and grow so much more if you put your hands in the clay of music. And that could be something as simple as learning how to clap better or more interestingly, or singing songs or whatever. And if you're a musician, and especially if you're a DJ producer, if you're in my world and you make dance music, pay more attention to the impact of making music that incites art, not just emotion on a dance floor, because you have to realize like there are now many generations of people all over the world, as we were just got done watching in a competition setting, of young people that are looking to this music to help them create new forms of art and movement. And I think a huge part of us maintaining our culture of good dance music is going to realize that it's getting to those people. And then lastly, just the regular promotion stuff. Please check out my music. I would be forever grateful if you check out what I got going on. You can Google me, Coflo. I'm on all streaming platforms, all the digital retail stores. Check out my Bandcamp, where it has a lot of like my white label stuff, and a lot of it's there for free. If you want to give me a tip, you can, but it's coflo.bandcamp.com. And also this year I launched my Patreon, which is essentially like a way to executive produce the projects that I'm doing. Patreon.com/Coflo. You get access to all of my music that I can give ahead of time legally. So like all my promos and new shit that are coming out, remixes, everything. If I can legally give it, I give it. You get it before even all the famous DJs get it. You get access to all of my studio sessions that I do that I might be streaming that aren't archived. So you get access to all that. We have a growing community of producers and things. People aren't really interacting with each other, not using the Patreon like that. In a perfect world, that would be really cool if we develop like a community of artists in there. But so far, the people that are producers, music people, whatever, dancers, etc., you have access to me. If I have anything to share or help you with, you can message me directly. And it's like, I try to like always make myself accessible, but as my life gets busier, it gets harder and harder. And it's not about paying for access to me. It just makes it so that I know the effort and what I put in, like the people that are trying to support my projects, like that's the way to do it. So new age, buy me a cup of coffee once a month and you get fucking way more back in return.
Yeah. Any shout outs you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I mean, shit. Shout out to all the amazing people that have been supporting my music. Shout out to my fantastic wife for all of your support, Tsunami. If without her, it would be impossible to do what I do, without a doubt. She makes life so easy, the fact that I have her as a partner. Shout out to my crew, Circle of Fire, Soul Shifters, Sour Patch, all these artistic people that I'm surrounded by that keep doing the thing. Shout out to United Capoeira Association, my masteries, and my capoeira group. And yeah, shout out to everybody who's fucking with good music. I appreciate you. And shout out to you, Vin. Podcast has grown, bro. I'm very proud of you. I'm very happy to be back. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming back. Always a pleasure to have you. And looking forward to having you back in maybe 2 years or so.
Yeah, let's go. Number 3, I'll be the first third person.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure. I learned a lot, and it's really cool being able to like learn about this stuff in real time.
Yeah, for sure.
From dope people.
Dope, hell yeah. All right, y'all. Peace.